Exciting.
Oh, we're live.
We are indeed.
This is exciting. We'll wait for a few people to join us, but I am so excited that we have got to have this voice-to-voice, face-to-face discussion.
I know.
It's
I
been
have a bit of a girl crush on you, I have to say. Don't worry, I am half a world away. But even when we had a little practice just a second ago, and the second you hung up, I was like, she looks so great. I'm going to go put more lipstick on. You have set a very high bar.
Oh, bless your cotton socks. You don't have to worry about being a world away. You'd be the one in trouble if that was not the case. But my husband is British, so I'll be coming on holidays. Don't you worry.
I hope you do, as soon as we're all allowed to travel.
I know, fingers crossed. Well, to anyone who is coming in and joining us, we have, of course, Adele Parks with us. And Adele does not need any introduction, but in case there are any of you who have been living under a rock, I will give you a short introduction about Adele. So Adele Parks is one of the UK's biggest selling women's fiction writers. She has sold 4 million copies of her UK edition. I mean, that number is just too big to get my head around. And her books have been translated into 30 languages. So this is just an incredible career that you have had. Now, I think I'm right. You've published 20. Is this number 21? Is both?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you are far too young to have published 21 novels. And the previous 2 books, Lies, Lies, Lies and Just My Luck, were both #1 bestsellers. Is that right?
Yes.
Wow. And look, not everyone who's going to be here today will have read both of you yet, but I've read it and I can tell you that it is your best book yet. So, and I am a very big Adele fan girl too. So there were pretty big shoes to fill, and this one was just incredible. Thank you. Thank you for being here with us. It's such a treat for us here in Australia to have you here.
Well, just before all the horrible pandemic hit, I was really in Australia on tour. And it was like the last great memory. So thank you, Australia. I literally did a tour in sort of February, 2020, in the Sydney area mostly. Lots of libraries in the Sydney area, and I met so many amazing people and confidently said, oh, I'm going to do this every year. I'll see you again next year. Yeah.
Who could have known? I remember when you were here and I was so jealous that I didn't get to hang out with you, and I thought, yeah, we'll do it next time, and we will do it next time. It's just a little bit later than we thought. But look, no one fear, because while we are going to talk about both of you, we are not going to give any spoilers because we know that not everyone has read the book. And if you have any questions for Adele, then you can leave them here in the comments and we are going to come to them at the end. But please keep those questions spoiler free because other people will be able to see them. But I think Adele will answer most questions as long as they're not spoiler free. But
yeah, that's a good point actually, because even questions, because this book is really hard to talk about, as we're finding as promoing, because it's a slightly different premise to it, in so much as the first twist. It's a psychological thriller, and as you know, because you write brilliant psychological thrillers, the whole point of a psychological thriller is you keep people on the edge of the seat and they keep turning those pages, and there are different reveals and not necessarily twists, but certainly reveals and different viewpoints throughout, and your thinking shifts. You think you can believe in one thing and then you find out something different, and normally it all kind of sorts itself out at the end. But I threw in a massive twist, didn't I, quite early on in this novel, about a third of the way in. So everything you read for the first third is one part of it, and then
I know. And it's the best twist, and I did not pick it, and it was just one of those gasp, drop the book, immediately flick back and read everything that you've read before moments. It was so well done. And it was even more well done in the sense that when you flicked back, you thought, oh shit, I should have got this. I should have known, but I didn't. And so you hadn't hidden it and not given us the information you had, but it was just so cleverly done. But before, this is going to be annoying for people to listen to, tell us what the book is about in your spoiler-free version because I'm too scared to do it in case I ruin anything.
On the screen, you can see the real cover because Sally and I can do that. Because Sally has an advanced copy, if you're wondering why her cover's different. So it's called Both of You because it's about two women who both go missing from London within the same week. One of them is Lee. She's, I think she's kind of like most of us. She's a mum of two boys. She's actually stepmom, but she's been looking after them since they were very, very little, the only mum they can remember. She works as well. So her life is literally screaming at the kids, have you even attempted your homework? Where's your football kit? And then rushing to check her laptop is charged because her boss is breathing down her neck. I think we can all relate. Yeah. And she lives with her landscape gardener husband and they're happy. But one day she rushes out to work and never comes home, and her bank accounts are not touched. Her phone just goes dead. There's no records. There's no use of it. In the same week, another woman called Kai, who actually only lives physically a couple of miles away, but the way it works in London is we're pretty cheek to jowl. It's literally the opposite to Australia. There is no space. So you can have people living in glorious penthouses, which is exactly what Kai does do, right next to people in kind of terrace houses with ordinary backgrounds. So Kai lives with her slightly younger, very handsome husband, who was really good fun to write.
Yeah, he was fun to read.
Yeah. I think she had a lot. Remind me to tell you what my mum, well, I'll tell you now. My mum calls him the much enjoyed man. Which I love. Thanks, Mum.
I enjoyed him.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, oh, I like the much enjoyed man. I'm like, right, mother, we can never have this conversation. Anyway, Kai is her life really is, she's child free. Her life is about managing the staff and throwing glorious dinner parties with, local politicians, up and coming artists. She kind of knows all the great and good. It's very kind of enviable on the surface. But to balance her, she also has a mother with Alzheimer's who she cares for deeply and looks after. But she walks out to an appointment and never comes home. Now, on paper, there's no real reason for these two women to be connected. People go missing all the time. Sadly, hundreds of thousands of them. The vast majority come home unharmed. They just return themselves. But some don't come home. And the DC in charge of the case is convinced at a gut level that these women, there is a connection. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say there is, because obviously that would be a really interesting book. If you read it to the end, you're like, no, really, they're not connected. But no, they are connected. And the DC has to unearth why and how. Have they run away? Have they been taken away? What are they running from or towards? All those kind of questions.
It is so well done. And the women, I was, as you say, they were so different, but I was equally invested in each of them. And they felt very distinct. And I was really just turning those pages to try and figure out what the connection was. I'm wondering if it would be a spoiler to talk about what happens in the prologue. Kind of that, because that was, as soon as I opened the book, usually it takes a bit of time to get into something. And do you want to just tell us what happens in the prologue? Because
jump right in on this one, don't I? I did that actually as a response to readers, which I think is quite interesting, because I've always said, don't think about this sounds awful. Don't think about your readers when you're writing, and don't think about your mum enjoying your heroes when you're writing.
Just much enjoyed man.
Yes, just keep writing. However, I'm quite a slow build person. I really build on characters. And so a lot of my books are pretty slow burn. And that was coming back in reviews, official reviews and reader reviews, kind of going, do you know, I had to put a lot of time in before I understood where these characters were going. So this time I completely smashed it up. And
You really did.
I did. Just dropped in this relatively terrifying first scene, because it isn't a spoiler. Somebody is definitely being held under duress. A woman is chained to a radiator in an empty room. And obviously, immediately your sympathies go out to her. She tries to stand up. The chain yanks her down. She tries to feel around the room. She kind of works out how many meters It is, it's black, it's silent, she's terrified. And then she hears a typewriter, like an old-fashioned typewriter outside the door of her room. And a note has slipped underneath the door. And she has to struggle and kind of get it via her feet and pull it towards her. And when she reads the note, it says, "I am not the villain here." Which I hope sends shivers and certainly asks questions, because you pretty much assume the person like locking the other person up is the villain. But their stance is that they are not the villain. So you just don't know from get-go who's who, which I think, Sally, is, that you do that too. You have multiple viewpoints. There's a lot of fun to be had with that, isn't there? There's sort of the you don't quite know who to trust. And have you got a reliable narrator, or is it an unreliable narrator? And readers are so clever. Readers look for clues, and they want to get involved, and they want to emotionally and intellectually invest and unpack things. So yeah, I hope I've delivered that for you guys.
Oh, you've not only delivered that, you really get that whiplash in the first scene, and it doesn't relent, but you also care about the characters, which I think is what makes the difference between something that's just a thriller that kind of makes your heart race and then you close it and then that's the end, or a book that you feel you keep thinking about after you finish reading it. And this one is definitely the latter. But now that people know a little bit about what it's about, and especially that first scene where the woman is chained up, I have to ask about inspiration, because this doesn't feel like something that would have happened to you. Did you read something? Was it just something you conjured up in your mind? Like, where did it come from?
I think there's a few things, like literally, you know too, Sally, that I think every book has elements of me or my life, or some tiny little element will be in there. One of the characters, for instance, talks about her relationship with men when she was a lot younger, and she's a bit of a people pleaser. And I know there's a bit of me in there, but the rest of it did not happen to me, because, I'm 21 novels in, and I've lived quite a life, I promise you, but not that big a life. I could not have lived these 21 heroines, and all their friends and all those other things. So yeah, you do get inspiration from other things. And because this book is about missing people, I work at home in this office, but pre-COVID days, I used to go into London. I'm about 30 minutes from London, so I'd go into London at least once a week. And one of the things that I always note is the signs that you see up that are heartbreaking. My mum is missing, my brother's missing. And over weeks, you watch the same sign, and sometimes water runs down it, rainwater, or it yellows, or it curls, or somebody else puts a sign above it. And these might be on, there's like notice boards in stations, or there might be on a lamppost or something. And it's heartbreaking if it's a cat or a dog. So it's obviously heartbreaking if it's a person. And I always think about the people actually putting the signs up, let alone the people that are missing, where are they? But the people putting the signs up that are left with that question, that void, sometimes in the worst case scenarios, for the rest of their lives. And I think that's horrifying. And our domestic situations, which we all now know because of too many lockdowns, etc., our domestic situations are in the end all that matters to us. I mean, I care about the globe. I want the world to function well. I want us to be peaceful, and I want us to be economical, and I want to pass the globe on to my son and his children, and so on and so forth. I want all those things to happen. But largely that starts from, because I want my family to be safe and well. And even my ancestors to come, or the people who come after me, I want them to be safe and well. So any kind of psychological thriller, I do like to base around families, because I think the stakes are always higher. I think we can always imagine ourselves in those positions, even if, we've never been in them. And it is quite a claustrophobic novel in some ways. And I think that possibly because I did write it through lockdown. And our lockdowns here, I think, we all had similar experiences, but ours went on for months. Literally, we saw nobody other than our families, which is great. He's literally in the. He can hear me.
I would have liked to lock someone up in our lockdown, I think. My husband could have ended up in a cell in our house. That could be the next novel.
Well, interestingly, I mean, lockdown is only briefly in the background of this book because nobody actually wants to read about it because actually we want the escapism from it. But I do wonder what a kind of rich pickings we can have as authors going forward.
Oh my goodness. I know. And I actually said to a friend, you said it was just a little bit in the background, but I actually said to a friend after I finished reading this book, was that what I loved about it was the way you used the lockdown as just this kind of sinister backdrop, and it kept, it kind of rose with the tension of the book, and it was a really clever usage of it, because I've had authors that I know talk about how they've just left the pandemic out of their writing. Maybe they've set a book, in 2019. I think there'll be a lot of books coming out set in 2019, right. Or it's been the whole book, and you used it as you experienced it, which I think worked so well for this book.
Yeah, it wasn't part of my plan. I plan books about a year in advance. I'm a huge planner. I'm desperately organized. I'm really annoying. And
tell us about that. Tell us about your
process. So I plan. Okay, so right now I'm 95,000 words into 2022's book. So that's definitely happening. There will be a book. And so that means I've got sort of 5,000 or 10,000 more words to write. That will be finished by the end of June. And then that kind of goes off to my publisher, and they work their magic, and they start sort of selling it in, hoping overseas territories will take it, and looking at covers, that kind of magic to make it something that's just been in my mind and on my page, just something glorious that you all want to read. Yeah. And while that's happening, I will start mulling over 2023's novel. And by about the end of August, I will have a really firm idea of something I want to investigate. And I will start putting that on paper and working out what the dead ends might be. So I usually start with a plot and or a theme. Then I think once I've worked out I worked hard on this plot, I think, okay, so who could this happen to that would be most devastating, which is really hard of me. I am not a girl that ever pulled wings off insects, trust me, but I do like I really am not, but I do like playing my characters. So
it's a safe way of being a sadist, I think. No one gets harmed, except the characters.
All the angst out there. And so then I will start playing with my characters, and I have this process with my characters where I interview them. So obviously, whenever we start writing a book, we know that, in this one, I'm going to have 2 women in their early 40s. One of them's both going to be married. One of them's going to have kids. One of them isn't. You might work out their sort of sexuality. That's sort of their, the sexuality, their age, their gender, their job. There's basics. But then I want to really know those characters. So I want to know things like, what's the moment that they're most ashamed of in their lives? What is the biggest triumph of their life? What's the one thing they wouldn't tell anyone? What's the one thing they don't trust about their best friend? There's a lot of kind of nuance. Do they have siblings? Were they the favorite child? There's all sorts of things. So I have this kind of 50 questions, and I will ask my characters these questions, not in a room with a table and chairs, because that would be weird, but on a computer at the answer.
Do you write them down? Do you write their answers down? Wow.
Not that all of that would appear in the book, because that would be a really dull book, but it means when I finally do start writing, I have some density behind me. I have my side, which actually is just previous me, but yourself that it's kind of a quite isolated process writing. So you get to a point where you think, I don't know what happens next. You go, aha, I do. It will be in my notes. She talk to someone. Who would she talk to? Oh, look, her favorite sibling is Mark, or whoever it might be. I'm going to call him in my book. So it gives me that kind of backup, and I think it's a really nice process. But all of that takes me from about August till about December, and I'm still not writing. And then in January, I will start writing, and then it'll take me about 6 months to get the whole thing done, sometimes less. And in that time, I am also, of course, promoting the one that I shipped off. So there is a process.
And copy editing and doing all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Sorry.
It's an incredible thing being, oh, sorry. No, you finish that thought.
Just remember that thought that you asked the question, which is, so the lockdown wasn't really in it. When I planned it, nobody knew about lockdown. But then when lockdown happened, I thought, oh, actually, that's really useful, because in Britain, we had this whole thing where all the police resources were going on to kind of looting and riot management, because they thought we would all loot and riot. In fact, we formed WhatsApp groups with our neighbours and made marches with our neighbours.
Did they remember that you were British, and really good rule following humans?
We know our place in the world, and it's to shut up and put up, just do it, So there was no way we were going to riot, but they had to account for it, because who knows? And maybe. So there is this sort of ticking clock in the book. There is only a week whilst they're preparing for lockdown where they have to find these women, because after that all doors are locked and probably any leads would go cold. I knew there was a reason I was telling you about process.
Oh, no, I don't care. I was just making a million notes in my head about how I need to interview my characters, and the other comment that you made about dead ends, and that is something to explore at the beginning, because, I mean, why didn't I think of that? I just wait till I get to the dead end, and then I just flagellate myself for being such an idiot to write a book that's got me to that point. So of course, you've done it 21 times. Why did I not ask you?
Yeah, but you always fix it, and you have absolutely no dead ends in your books, and they are so fabulously readable, and you can't put them down. So whatever your process is, that works too, and that's the thing. We all have different processes.
Oh, bless you. Well, everyone does. The more authors you speak to, the more you realise that there is no one way, and in fact, the one way for you is not the one way for someone else. But I actually think your one way might work for me too. So I'm stealing it.
Because I think we're very similar. I think we're very similar.
I think we are.
It's so extraordinary. We Sally and I met through books, in so much as I read her book before I knew anything about her. I think it was sort of 2 books ago, The Mother-in-Law.
Yeah,
I could write it down and I was just like, oh, I could have written this, which sounds very vain. But what I read, it felt very like, your characters are kind of people I really want to know about. I just loved it, and because of that, I started cyber stalking her, and then we became friends via that route, sort of liking each other's work, because I think we relate. So I think my process probably would work for you, because I think we're quite similar.
I think we are, but I think you actually are underselling, because the reason we got to know each other is because you tried to send the blurb to my editor, and then that missed out, and you were so lovely that you didn't just let it go into the abyss. You then got in touch with me and said, I did give you this blurb. So and that, of course, is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Yes, because I couldn't let it go, and I had a feeling. I thought, why haven't they used that blurb? Why has nobody talked about that blurb? Because I'm raving about this book. People need to know I'm raving about it. And yes, it just got into somebody's junk mail, which is rude.
Which was fortuitous in the end, because we got to connect, which was lovely. I've got some more questions, but I just want to give a call out that if anyone wants to ask questions, I'm not sure if, there are some coming through. That's good. Okay, we're going to get to that. I'm just going to ask you one more question of mine, and then we're going to get to these questions. There's quite a lot of questions. Okay, I'm going to ask you, tell me what your favourite books are of all time, and they could be ones that you loved as a child, they could be ones that you loving now. Your all-time favorite.
I probably would come back to Emma by Jane Austen.
Yes, good choice.
Yeah, because Emma, apparently Jane Austen devilishly planned to pen a heroine nobody would like, and she said, I can't remember the exact quote, but she said, nobody's going to like her but me. I love Emma because she's too faulty. She's so wrong. She's beautiful and rich and all the rest of it, but so lacking in any level of self-awareness and absolutely interfering. And yet we love her. And eventually it all, I don't think it's much of a spoiler, all books of Jane Austen, it all comes good. And she gets the man she deserves, and he deserves her too. And it's perfect. And I remember reading that about 14-year-old and thinking, not about the romance side, which I think is what most 14-year-old kids do think about. I thought about, wow, she's so up. She's really messed up. She really is messed up. And what a great heroine to write. So I think I've always written messed up heroines. after that. Women,
Wow.
yeah, even in my early novels, which were much more sort of romantic fiction, they definitely had women that had a journey to go on before they were quite ready for life. And certainly in my psychological thrillers, not just the women, all the characters, but because now I write about men a lot more too, but the characters are messy because we are messy. And
Yeah.
that's the joy of us. I think human beings, I have this thing about with only species that have language, certainly language to the extent, we have. Although clearly my cat talks to me, but, have real language.
And my dog. Yeah.
We tell lies. I mean, how amazing is that? I just find us extraordinarily interesting. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it started with Emma.
Oh, what a great story about how something you read when you're 14 can influence not just, but you as a person and what you've done with your career. And I always think about that when my children are holding a book in their hands, and I think, you don't know what the moment's going to be or what the book's going to be, but that was so important to you. And I'm never afraid of creating what they call an unlikable character, because I think that they're the most interesting ones. But let me get to, because I've talked too much, let me get to the question. There's a good one from Happy Valley Books Read. What made you switch from writing contemporary fiction to brilliant psychological thrillers?
Well, thank you. So I did, yeah. I've been all over the place with my genres. And the thing is I just write these books and then my poor publishers kind of go, yeah, you've changed genre again. I'm like, oh, yeah, meant to mention that. The big shift was I wrote 2 historical novels, sort of about 2014, 2015. I set in World War One and the aftermath, because I always found that time of history absolutely fascinating. And really, I wanted to write about the 2 stories were one about a conscientious objector, because nobody understands that war. Nobody understands. It was land. It was a land grab, and we lost millions. All of us lost millions. And then after that, there was the Second World War as a consequence. It's horrific. So I wanted to write about this conscientious objector because I felt he probably knew something the rest of us didn't. And then after that, I also wrote about these spare brides, these women who had been brought up, middle class and upper class women who'd been brought up, particularly in Britain. It was a thing, you'd been brought up to think you're going to marry, and that was it. And after the war, there was 1 million men of marrying age, fewer than there were of women marrying age. So they couldn't marry. So they might have already lost their husbands or their brothers or their fathers or their fiancés, but they also had lost their chances of maybe moving on or meeting someone new. So these women became feminists and trailblazers, and they were our first female engineers and doctors and pilots and all the rest of it. So there was a silver lining. But after I finished those books, where literally killed tens of thousands of people before breakfast because I was writing battlefields, I couldn't tell myself that writing a kind of romance, was even a deep romance with an unlikable heroine, was enough anymore. I wanted to know what people would live or die for, which often, by the way, is love. So in my psychological thrillers, love is still a huge theme, quite often pretty warped, not that healthy a version thereof. But that's where I found I just had to go. I think there's another factor. So I'm 52 now. So when I started, my books were very much about looking forward. Where was I going to live? Who was I going to marry? How many kids were going to have? What would my career be? Because would it always be writing, or would I do other things? And I wanted my characters to investigate those things. At my age, I find I spend quite a bit more time looking at consequences, which isn't sad. Everyone thinks, oh, that sounds terrible, you're looking back. I'm not. I'm actually looking at a lot of really positive consequences. And I quite often can think, thank goodness I didn't take that path, or thank goodness I was brave enough to jump ship at that point or take that risk at that point. But it does mean I'm more aware of the choices you make and looking back. So I think, again, my characters reflect that. And psychological thrillers are often an unlayering, they're like an onion, and you're taking the skins off. So it's a bit more looking back rather than looking forward. So I think those factors combined is where I ended up. And hello, Happy
Yeah.
Valley, I love you.
I know, Phil and Craig. Hello. Oh, that was a great answer. I agree. I think sometimes these books follow the trajectory of our lives and the things that are important to us. And, you know, at some point you really just want the stakes to be high and for it really to matter. And the world is the family's a microcosm of the world in a way. And where the stakes are so high. Have I got time for one more question? A lot of the questions here are notes of love to you and your books and how amazing they are, and people saying they've bought it and they can't wait to dig in. But Sally Johnson has said that she really, really loves your books, including this new one, but she feels like the story isn't quite finished and is wondering if there might be a sequel coming up for this book. I thought that it felt finished, but do you have any thoughts on that?
It is quite ambiguous, not ambiguous, but there are two ways this could go afterwards. And there is one clue, which I can't tell you, but if anyone who's read it, send me an email or a Facebook or an Insta and we can discuss it on that. There is one clue that is untied up and if discovered, things could turn out very differently. So there is a potential in my mind for a short story to follow up. It's certainly in my mind, there is, at this point, I'm not seeing another novel. But never say never. I have 3 books in my catalogue of 21 books that are connected. One was my debut, Playing Away. 7 years later, I wrote a book called The Other Women's Shoes. And then I think 12 years after that one, I wrote Lies, Lies, Lies. They're in different genres and they are very different in tone, but they're the same characters. And we watch them grow up in real time of 20 plus year time. And I would never, when I wrote Playing Away 20 odd years ago, I would never have assumed I was going to do that. But they just came back to me and they wanted their stories to be told. The kind of peripheral characters that had been in the background suddenly wanted their moment, which makes me sound barking. I'm completely aware of that.
Not to me.
Good. So therefore, I would never say never. It's not an impossibility. It's certainly nothing I'm planning in the next couple of books. If it happened, I'm guessing it would be 2024.
Well, can I just
ahead?
Yeah, can I just say, if you do revisit this character, I would like to hear from, what was it, the adorable man that I think he could definitely be a character that would guarantee a few sales.
Yes.
But listen, we have talked so much, and what I want to say before we get off, this is not the Australian cover. The Australian cover you will see right here on your screen. This will be the best book that you read this winter, Australians. You need to get your hands on this, snuggle up with a blanket. You will read it really fast and you will love it. Make sure that you order it today. You will not regret it. Get on social media and talk about it. We love Adele Parks. We want to bring her back to Australia as soon as we can. And I want all of you to check this book out for yourselves. So this has been an absolute pleasure. Let's hope.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, and I just hope this is not going to be the last time. And I hope next time it's going to be face-to-face and all of these people can be here in the audience and you can sign their books. But I think I can speak for all of us when I say that we're very excited about reading everything that comes next for you as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've loved being here. And yes, I can't wait to get back. Such a warm, fabulous country with really exciting and can't wait.
Oh, well, it's just so nice to listen to your accent as well. We love that.
Also, can I tell you, the secret is over here, my accent's not that great. It's quite northern, which people are quite snobby about northern accents here. They like the southern kind of Queen's English, which I can do for you if you'd like me to, but I don't normally speak this way. So
I hear a little bit of northern, but my husband's from the Isle of Man and he's got a northern sounding accent, and that's my favourite, the northern accent, the cup of tea.
Exactly. God, you did that well. You did that really well.
Well, we've been married a while. He's starting to say cup now, like an Australian, which is a bit sad. Anyway, we could talk about this all day. I'm going to let you go. Thank you, everyone. Don't forget to buy the book. Go and buy the book. You're going to be so happy that you did.
Thank
you, Adele.
Thanks, Sally.